The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to the Cache Overview webinar. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Nate Cooper from Promax Systems. I'm the VP of Sales over here. I'm going to be taking you through our newest product line here at Promax. So what we're going to be talking about today is we're just going to start out with a little bit of information on who we are. So I know I've got a lot of our reseller partners from around the world joining on this today, and especially with the acquisition of Cache, a lot of you may or may not know us. I'll just give you some foundations there. And then we're going to get into somewhat of a learning portion of this content and just talk about the archival of digital assets, things that you should be considering, what factors, what options are out there. And we're going to focus mostly on LTO-based archival, and we'll circle back to why that is. But that'll be kind of the learning portion. And then we're going to get into Cache as a product. So what is Cache? How is it a different product on the market? And what are some of those specific features that we offer within Cache? And then all of that features, what it is, what it does, that's all great, but we're going to talk about workflows. I always like to wrap it back to workflows because that's how you actually use it. So we'll take a look at some specific scenarios that users, hundreds and thousands of users are already doing out there. And then, of course, I'll cover warranty and support, always an important topic there. So let's dig in. So who is Promax? So if you're not familiar with us, we've been around for about 20 years now. We're a manufacturer of products that focus on digital media workflows. It's really that simple. So if you didn't hear already, Cache, what we're talking about today, Cache is a product line or a company that we acquired about 2 weeks ago now. So they are the newest member of the Promax family, and we have a myriad of different products, Platform or Promax One workstations, these different products, but they all really focus on those digital media workflows. And if you're an end user, what you should know is that we do have VAR and integration partners all over the world. So you can get local support and local partners that support our products pretty much anywhere that you're at. So that's a little bit about us, what we do. So let's talk about archiving digital assets. What are your options? So when it comes to archival, you've probably heard the term backup. You've probably heard the term archive. They're often misused terms, and they are somewhat conceptually different. And it's important to think about those differences simply from the standpoint of it is two different uses of a very similar concept, which is protecting your data, which is what this is all about. Protecting your data, protecting your business. But when you look at the concept of backup versus archive, the easiest way I like to think of it is backup is a data set that you back up to recover massive amounts of data in kind of these scenarios. So backup is to protect you from a server that fails, a file system that gets corrupted. This could be an earthquake or a fire or a tornado that takes out your data center. You've got to have a backup of that data because at the end of the day, all of our businesses anymore are based solely around the data that we that we create. So protecting that data is protecting your business. So backup is about those recovering massive amounts of data in those scenarios. Whereas archive is a little bit more, there's certainly an aspect and a critical aspect of archival that it is about data protection, but it's more with the idea of individual files, individual projects, and it wraps much more into your kind of online active workflow. So the idea with archive is everything from backing up a project and all of its related materials to being able to quickly access those projects that were backed up, bring them back to your main storage. An archive can really be used and should be used to keep your most expensive, most highest performing, most valuable main tier 1 shared storage clean and clear. So archive should really be part of your kind of active workflow within your assets there. So when it comes to backup or archive, there's really 4 different options that you can consider. And there's some upsides and downsides to all of these. So individual drives, this is kind of where everybody starts. Hey, plug in a FireWire drive, copy some material over, stick it on the shelf, call it backed up. That is where we all start. It's just simply not a great way to do it, though. And we'll cover some of the reasons. But at the end of the day, spinning disks are just a very non-protected media format. So when you get into a little bit more professional and protected workflows, you'd be looking at things like network storage, cloud, and LTO. So when it comes to network storage, the upsides is it's really fast, it's immediately accessible, everybody can access it throughout your facility. The downside is it's really expensive. So it takes up space, it takes up power. When you run out of the 32 terabytes that you had, you have to buy more storage, and that's really expensive. So there's some good sides and some downsides, but it's not great for backup either. So network storage can work well to have kind of a cheap RAID to move some of your projects that you're not working on currently off of. But as far as being able to back up data just in case there's a fire, not exactly a great option. Then we've got cloud, which is kind of on the opposite side of that. So cloud is very inexpensive to get into on the front end, but it's actually pretty, it tends to be in the long term about the same cost as network storage locally. But with cloud, it's great backup medium, but it's not so good for archival because it's not going to interact with your data very quickly. So it's very slow. Obviously, you're uploading and downloading from the internet. And the other big thing with cloud this varies from company to company. A lot of people don't like the idea of their media on another server that they're not in control of. And then last but not least, LTO. So LTO, if you're not familiar with it, it's a linear tape, and it's literally a digital tape. So the downsides of LTO, it requires special hardware, special software, like the cache system we're talking about. So it doesn't have that ease of normal drives where you just plug it in and go. And a lot of people consider LTO or don't like it because of access speeds, and it's because it is a tape. You can't just jump around from file to file. So that's why you have these software layers to control it. But the upsides with LTO are you absolutely, it is the gold standard for data protection long term. And we'll get into some specifics on that right here. But from that concept, back to that concept of archive versus backup, and archive is kind of that, file and project-based archival, whereas backup is kind of that disaster recovery scenario. Where LTO becomes really unique is when you look at the details of what you want out of an archive versus a backup, LTO is really the only product on the market, whether it's cache or any other LTO system, but the only product that can really handle both of those scenarios very elegantly. So that's pretty unique, and probably I would say one of the most compelling factors of why most companies go with LTO for backup and archive systems. So why use it? Simply put, 19% of hard drives fail. A lot of people don't realize this. I've personally had this happen. I've used I put it on a hard disk and stuck it on the shelf in the past. And I don't have data that I used to have now because of that. I've lost some of my music projects in the past because of this. So the simple reality is you don't get to choose when this happens. So there's a pretty massive risk with, and this pertains mostly to that concept, and I see a lot of facilities do this. That concept of, oh, we put it on a second hard drive, and that hard drive's sitting on the shelf. The failure rates in that scenario are pretty high. So do be careful, because as we all know, more than ever, data drives our businesses, and when we lose data, it is not good for our businesses. Some other little factoids about LTO that are pretty fantastic. Because it is a tape-based system, there's no power required. So this is a huge difference. So when you look at kind of a hard drive sitting on a shelf versus an LTO sitting on the shelf, they may look the same to your eyes, but hard drives are designed to stay spinning, to stay moving all the time. In fact, powering off a drive is actually pretty bad for it. Whereas LTO systems were designed to, LTO tapes are designed to sit on the shelf. There's literally over 200 million LTOs worldwide. And the reason for that is this is the format that IT infrastructure backs up to, period. There's no other format. There's no other format that you could even argue has a more dense backup base worldwide. It's what the military backs up data to, banks, everyone backs up to LTO. So and it's for all of these reasons. It's for the shelf life. You can come back to one of these tapes 25, 30 years from now, and the data will still be there. One thing that I do want to talk about, which is really important as you look at LTO, because it is a little bit different than just a standard hard drive. So you should be aware of, there are two major formats. So kind of like with hard drives, we have different ways we can format a hard drive. It's very similar with LTO. And the reason these formats exist is because, again, if you think about it, it's linear. It's not like a hard disk that spins and a reader can jump around to different parts of the disk. It's linear, so you have to start at the start and finish at the finish, and go through that sequentially. So you've got these formats that are designed to work well with that type of system. So the two types of formats are TAR and LTFS. And these both have upsides and downsides. TAR has definitely much more dense use in LTO world. LTFS is honestly new within the last few years. It's really gained a lot of steam. And LTFS, the idea is, one of the things people don't like about LTO is with a lot of systems, it's very cumbersome, very hard to use, because you can't just open your tape and look at what's on it. You have to have some type of database that's managing that data that's on that tape, and how can you search that database, etc. So LTFS came along with the idea of how can we make this look more like a traditional file system. Those are the two types of formats, and what I'm going to come back to in this, and this is so super critical, is the fact that Cache has a non-proprietary deployment of formats on LTO, which I'm going to circle back to what that means, but it is one of the things you really have to look out for in LTO systems. So that there's a little bit of education on backup, archival, LTO, different options, etc. So what is Cache? Well, it's real simple. Cache is a single appliance that's designed to handle your backup, archival, and digital delivery. So this is something we haven't talked about yet, which actually gets into a huge value of this product and how users are using it in the real world, especially within media workflows. So, and we are designed, just like all of our products here at Promax, Cache is really focused on digital film and video workflows. So there's a couple really important factors and features that we've built in because of that. And we'll dig into that and can always handle those questions later as well. So, and then one of the big things with Cache, with the system, is this is designed for, and this is so critical, single users or multiple user environments. And we'll get into exactly what that means, what that looks like. But the three core, really, when you boil this whole product down, It's about saving your data, giving your data safety, giving you a cost-effective use of your most expensive Tier 1 storage, and then last but not least, improved file delivery. And we haven't talked much about this, but we're going to circle back to this in a much deeper way because it is really unique and it's really super cool. So there's three different ways of connecting to a cache, and this is where it's really so different than most products on the market. So with most backup LTO products, you really basically have a workstation that's connecting to a single LTO, and it's kind of the gatekeeper. Everybody has to go through that workstation. It winds up being very disconnected from your whole facility's workflow, and cache is just the opposite of that. So you can have users connect to the cache interface through anywhere on your network. There's gigabit Ethernet connection, so it plugs right into your whole network, and it's very simple. Because of that ease of use, you can give access to anyone on your network to back up and restore data. It makes it very easy. Doesn't make this single point where you have to go request this or that. It can actually be part of your active workflow because of that. What's more is you can actually connect via standard protocols like USB, SATA, FireWire, different protocols where you can directly connect to the system. So yesterday we were doing some setup, some training with some of our team, and we just pulled one of these upstairs, plugged in directly from a laptop over USB, and we started working on it. And that's really unique because I'll tell you, so many of these options require PCI cards and software installation and all of this cumbersome stuff, and you could just simply never do that. Cache, you can put cache in a road case, bring it with you on site, and be using it with somebody's laptop that's never had anything installed and doesn't need to install anything. So, and then last but not least, it integrates very well into your existing network as well. So you can kind of go the other way with cache, where you're actually accessing your network storage, and cache is handling that as a client and backing up your storage in the background. So pretty incredible connectivity to the system. And it does go back to those main uses. So again, archival and backup we covered pretty well. But what about digital delivery and source masters? So let's pause on that for a second because this is pretty big. In a file-based workflow, in the file-based world that we live in now, source masters don't exist. And what we've seen is many users using these to create source masters in these non-proprietary, very compatible formats, so that when you're on set, you're shooting on that camera, you have the ability to immediately make a source master of just the data that you want to. Very simple to do, very quick to do, and then that way you're walking away from your shoot with that physical source master that you can hold on to, you can come back to those raw RED files, RE raw files. You can come back to those 20 years from now if you need to. So it really is the true source master in a file-based workflow. And we see a lot of customers using it in a very similar way for digital delivery. So again, if you've ever stuffed a hard drive in its box and shipped it across the country, it's a little bit scary because at the end of the day there are physical headers in there and physical parts of the drive that are spinning around, and you don't have that with LTO. So it's a very safe format. It's the absolute safest format for physical delivery of large files. So you need to overnight 10 terabytes of data to from LA to New York. This is the way to do it. With cache, I touched on this a little, but there is a non-proprietary deployment of TAR and LTFS. This is one of the most important things about the product, because a lot of products require you to not only use their software to back up, but to restore. And that's where things get really dicey. What if that, small software company goes out of business and suddenly they don't support the OS that you're on, and you can't find an old copy. these things happen. You've been there, I've been there. If you have a proprietary-based system, which is a lot of the options out there, you are toast. And you might as well not have that backup and archive. With our system, if you should ever need to restore from another type of appliance, type of system, you can do that. You can even restore from just basic command lines in a Linux or Windows system. Oh, I'm getting a little error message here from GoToMedian. Hopefully the audio is okay here, but I apologize if it is cutting up a bit. Let's keep moving forward. So there are 3 versions of the Cache product. There's the Prime, the Pro, and the Power. So I won't spend too much time on this. You can check out our website, see the differences. But it really boils down to the Prime is a great just single users. It's great in network environments, but single drive, not super expandable. For smaller work groups, this is ideal. If you want to get into some of these auto-loading, options where you can have multiple LTO drives, and I'll talk about what that means in a second, then you need to get into the Pro and the Power. All of them run the same software. All of them have almost all of the same features, with the exception of something called simulcopy that we'll cover in a second. But you can get more information on our website on the differences of those. So let's talk about features. So I just mentioned simulcopy. So what is this? This is the ability to write multiple tapes at the same time. So what's cool about this is you can take a data set. Let's say you have you've got a Disney project and you want to back up just that information on that Disney project. With Cache, as long as you're in those, you can't do this with the lowest end version because it only supports the one drive. But if you have multiple tape drives on either of the Prime the Pro or the Power, you can actually write to both of those drives with that same data set at the same time, and then you've got the local archive for yourself. You've got a backup copy that you can send off site to backup, and you could even do 3 of these and send one of them to your facility on the other side of the country. Simulcopy allows you to take that same data set and write multiple tapes at the same time. What's cool too with Cache is a very similar feature, a very similar ability that I don't talk about here or have here, is the ability to do multiple tasks at the same time. So this is where, again, kind of that concept of using an archival device as part of your active workflow you can allow users to access it if you want them to from anywhere on the network, and you can have multiple people backing up data on one of your tape drives, restoring data from another, doing a couple different backups, making 2 copies at the same time. We support up to 4 devices all at one time. So this gives you a great ability to do multiple tasks from multiple users all at the same time. I've talked about a lot of this stuff. 1 gig, 10 gig connectivity options, really important depending on what kind of speeds you need. And then one thing that I haven't talked about is this checksum. So if you're not familiar with checksums, what we do is an MD5 checksum, which actually assigns a small serial number to each file and then keeps a database of that serial number. What's important about that is there's actually a couple discovery channel standards of digital delivery that are somewhat kind of becoming the industry standards very quickly, and I think they'll continue to be adopted that way. And this enables us, they actually have 3 different standards depending on what you're doing with the data, and they do require MD5 checksums. So again, a lot of systems support checksums, but not MD5 checksums to the discovery channel spec. And this allows you to have data interchange on a standardized format. And that's where the industry's going, because more and more people are using these as a delivery format. So one thing that is notable, we do have some pretty awesome library options. So 24, 48, and 80 tape library. And it's, in fact, if you look at the picture of that tall one, that is our 80 tape library with 2 expansion chassis. So you can actually add up to 6 expansion chassis to one of those. So you can literally have 1.4 petabytes of active archive backup tapes sitting in a library ready to be grabbed by a robot, which is really important. You always want a robot available to grab your data, and you can do that now with up to 1.4 petabytes. So a couple other notable features. The one thing I will touch on here is we do offer incremental backups. Really important. Again, this is not something everything can handle, but the ability to back up just the newest files, just the updated files. So Cache can actually look at the data set that you backed up last week, see what changes have happened, and update only the files that need to be updated. So gives you a lot of flexibility as you're using this, especially in those backup scenarios where you're trying to keep your data safe. So there are 2 hidden gotchas that I want to circle back to, because I will tell you, and I've seen it many a times. The 2 gotchas with LTO, that proprietary gotcha. This is probably the biggest one. Only being able to restore from the exact software you archived with, just not acceptable. It just doesn't work. And as you're looking at different options, validate this one. This is so super important, because I've seen a lot of companies that get very frustrated and angry, even because they find out years later that those hundreds of terabytes of data that are backed up can only be backed up by this, or restored by this one system that the guy that knows how to use it just left to go to another company. Which wraps us back to the other big gotcha, which is this one access point. It's just not good. With Cache, the whole idea here is let's network this device. Let's give everybody the ability. LTO backup archival should be something that you're talk with your children about. But seriously, this should be something that's owned by everyone in your company. Individual editors need to be thinking about the projects they're working on. With a product like Cache, with Cache, you can actually put that onus on the editor to make sure that they know that they have to back up, they have to archive their projects as they're working on them. And this should not just be the one IT guy in the back room that has a mysterious, hopefully he's doing his job, and I'll put in a request and cross my fingers if I need to get a file back that I don't know where it is. That's not good, and you can make this a real workflow and team product. So I'm going to finish this off just with a couple workflows real quick here. This is how we see a lot of people using it. Immediate source masters. You record a file on your red system, archive all of those raw files direct to your LTO as your source master. Bam, you're done. Moving these projects around. Save these projects as LTFS and tar for delivery. Send it across the country. Now your client with another type of LTO system, often because it is non-proprietary, can back up those files, start accessing them, start working them. Very safe for physical delivery. Archiving your final project. You've got that Disney project we were talking about. Let's wrap that up into one set of tapes. Let's say it's a 10 terabyte project and each tape is 2.5 terabytes. Cache will automatically span all of that data over all of the projects. And in fact, I've even seen customers that charge their clients for this. So it can be a revenue stream, or it can just be your ability to know that, hey, this Pelican case with these 5 LTO tapes is that Disney project that we made $500,000 on, and we've got to be able to pull it back if we need. And then keep those on hand. Keep them local for immediate access because that's your archive, or send them off-site for real protection. That's your backup. So you use that, back to that simul copy feature where you're making multiple copies at one time. Send those off to separate locations. Keep one local, send one to a separate location, and now you're really protecting your data from those real bad scenarios, the earthquakes, the fires, the tornadoes, this type of stuff. And last but not least, it's very cost effective. So here's just an example. LTO 6 tapes, these hold 2.5 terabytes. Backing up 100 terabytes of storage with a single backup, single copy, $2,000. So very cost effective. And again, this is something that any business, whether media or otherwise, should be copying, backing up their data, doing a true backup, and moving that off-site at least once a year. So this should just be part of your cadence as a company. We do include 1 year of hardware warranty and 1 year of unlimited software upgrades and support. Of course, that is extendable. And that's everything I've got for you, people. If you have any questions, there should be a little, I'm opening up my GUI here. There should be a little questions box here if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, if you want to take those offline, here's all my contact info. So feel free to reach out to me in any of these ways. I'd be happy to continue the conversation. We've got one question that popped up. If LTO drive supports LTFS, then isn't that universal in the software used, even if it went out of business years later? That is more true with LTFS than with TAR. So there are some gotchas there that I would actually, I've talked to my engineers about this, and I apologize because I'm not as versed on the gotchas there. I know that is a much bigger issue with the TAR formatting. So as you get into LTFS, that is less of an issue. When will the incremental backup be available? So that is a feature that should be available right now. If that is not, then please reach out to me if it's possible you're on an older version of the software. So if you've, so it looks like Gene, jot down my email address, shoot me an email, and let's start a conversation. All right, guys, it looks like that's about it for the day. So thank you so much for joining, and if you have any additional questions, here's one that popped up right now. What makes Prime at 8K so much better than something like M-Tape at 3.5K? This is a great question. And in fact, probably the owner of my company will tell me I should have focused more on this when we're done. But I've got my way with webinars. But when it comes down to what we're really talking about here is, should you put your own system together, or should you buy a packaged product, an appliance? And there are, it really boils down to, if you put it together yourself, and this is true with, archival, with shared storage, with editorial workstations, with almost every bit of technology on the market. If you can put these systems together, you can go get a license of Brew software or Archiware software. You can go buy I was checking last night on Amazon. Go to Amazon. You can buy a LTO tape that will SAS connect to a system. You can get a computer to be the main point to connect to that system. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Well, for a couple reasons. One, you do really get into a lot of those softwares don't support LTFS or have a very, how do I say, a very ugly implementation of LTFS. You can actually get the LTFS software free from HP. It's free download, and it's somewhat deceiving because people think that means you can just mount a system, drop files onto it, and go. Unfortunately, even though LTFS, and this is kind of the downside of LTFS, it's trying to mimic something that it's not. LTFS tries to make a tape look, taste, touch, and feel like a hard drive, and it's not. So the problem with a lot of these things comes down to how that database is being stored, how that database is being accessed. When you're writing those files, what's checking those files? And then specifically, especially if you're doing a DIY system, the access points become absolutely critical. So the ability to have multiple people, multiple users access those completely goes away. And again, I've seen so many facilities that have all of the best intentions of the world of protecting their data, and they wind up with one workstation in the back that's the backup your data workstation, and there's one guy that's assigned to doing that, and then it doesn't get used. Access point is a critical one, and then getting into some of the ability of maintaining that database. I'll tell you, the database functions in Cache are absolutely stellar. I did not get into this side of things, but we actually keep a database file on every drive or every tape that gets backed up. So even if you go to a different system, even if your system crashes, even if this or that, that database is actually kept on every file. So again, LTFS, this gets a little bit more gray, and the upsides and downsides. LTFS can look more like it's a little bit more drag and drop, but then when you go to restore those files, if you go to try to change anything on that tape, because it is a linear tape, it can be very cumbersome, very slow, and that's where you're going to want to spend 8K on a prime K versus, putting something together. 3.5K, I don't think that's right on the edge of realistic. It's kind of hard to put these systems together, especially considering you need a workstation for much less than about $4,500, $5,000. But you never know. These prices always drop. One more person asked, will this be recorded and available at a later date? Yes, we have recorded this, and again, if you've got any questions or want to go through this material, you can always reach out to me. We've got plenty of staff that can go through this stuff, but it will be it has been recorded and will be sent out via email. What would you say can access the LTO system over network? Is it only a local LAN network, or also external, like through FTP internet? That's a great question. So if you've got a VPN, you could access it through anywhere. It's really designed for the LAN. So if you're at home, and this kind of it's very similar when you're talking about shared storage. I can VPN into my network from home, and I can access everything that's on that network. It's just going to be really slow. I would not recommend using it to, mount local files and archive those local files from across the internet, because it's just going to be really slow and cumbersome. So it's not really designed for that. It's really designed to be that local network connectivity. Very cool. Well, I think that about wraps up, and I'm speaking slowly because another question came in. Does Cache integrate with CatDV? And Jeff, thank you. I totally had a note to add that in here, and I did not. Cache actually has the most direct advanced integration with CatDV on the market. So there is a specific plugin that was developed for Cache that allows you to integrate directly with CatDV, and it's really the only archive product on the market that allows you to do that. So yes, and that is a relationship that the guys that started Cache Corporation started, and because of some of the other products that we own, we actually already have a great relationship with Squarebox and work directly with them with some of our other products as well. How long will it take to archive an hour worth of DNX HD 145? All right, so we're getting into a math question here. So DNX HD 145, let's pull up the old calculator. All right. So DNX 145, So 145, anytime you see 145 or 220 or anything like that, that's the megabits. So generally, megabits is referring to speed, and megabytes is what people use in referring to size. So you'll see, 18 megabytes a second often as a speed reference. So that 145 is 18 megabytes a second. So you take that, and each minute is that many megabytes. So each minute is, let's divide that by 1024. A gig a minute is about what you're looking at there. So to archive an hour, you're archiving 60 gigs. LTO writes at about 120 gigs an hour. So you'd be looking at, for an hour of that, you'd be looking at around, with all the processes of doing that, I'd say around 30 to 45 minutes, right in that range. All right, so I did get a note. One of my marketing people popped in and said we will be sending the slide deck out as well. So that'll get emailed out to you along with a replay for this. So if anybody has anything else, I will talk slowly, and it does not look like that is the case. So thank you again so much for joining us this morning, and we've also got the same webinar is happening again in about 2.5 hours. So if you have any interest in listening to me babble again later, you have that option. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, and don't hesitate to reach out with anything else. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.